Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. So, fingers are pointing everywhere, blame is flying all over the place, and people in power are trying to wiggle out of their responsibility. This is the uproar right now in Korea, and the biggest spotlight has been placed upon, of course, the police, the lack of response, the lack of safety measures, the lack of planning. But when we got the initial reports, it made it look like the police was one monolithic organization. But as it turns out, the police department itself has many departments and many layers and therefore many chains of command. You'd think that actually with all of these players in the game that if one area didn't work out so well, another could pick up the slack, but actually it seems the opposite happened. And in our K-Beauty review, this is probably one of the best affordable probiotic serums from the K-Beauty world. It's the Missha Time Revolution Night Repair Ampoule 5X. So this is a much more revamped version of the Time Revolution. You may have seen Night Repair before. I've tried that Night Repair. Not that spectacular, but this one, I think they actually did an amazing job. It's much more potent. It has like 10 different probiotics that have been fermented in this secret sauce. And in the spirit of the holidays, the Seoul TV $60 off coupon just for Seoul TV viewers is still active. I'm leaving it on for you guys to get the best deal on the eye mask. Amazing 48 LED lights that basically take care of your under eyes and your crow's feet, and also has a heating function so you can get that power nap in, and the gold or white version of the LED face mask so you can get a full treatment for your face. 2 different wavelengths of LED lights that go into your skin where skincare can't go. So yes, we're going to use the best skincare on our face, but we also have to have the best treatment that goes underneath the skin. And you have to do that with technology. Don't go to an expensive dermatologist, just do everything at home. There's a new bundle package, so make sure you get your hands on that because it's been hard trying to get the inventory. So want to let you know that, when it's there, grab it while you can because we are completely sold out of the Platinum Edition. Sorry to say, rose gold, silver, LED masks are all gone. There's probably no place on this planet anymore for you to get it. I'm going to be negotiating with them to try to get more inventory in 2023, but that's still up in the air. So all that and more, stay tuned. Okay, so now that the tragedy has unfolded, we've been going through our mourning process. There have been many vigils and even protests, candlelight protests against the horrific lack of response to the Halloween crowd crush disaster. And there are many different targets right now, and targets rightfully so. So there's the police department, there's the presidential office, there's the interior minister, there's the Yongsan district office, there is the Seoul mayor. So today I wanted to focus mainly on the police. They are getting the biggest spotlight on them. And the reason why I bring this up is that the initial suspects, that small Itaewon police station, got the biggest brunt, but it seems as if they are the lowest police officers on the totem pole, and they almost were set out to be barbecued to be the main culprits while the people in power were able to wiggle out. But the Korean public, journalists, civil society, they knew what's going on. They immediately were able to spot and sniff out a rat and say like, look, yes, the local on-the-ground police department or that police office should have done better, but they are probably the last on the list for blame in this situation. So let's get into this. In every neighborhood in Korea, you'll see a small little police station about the size of a convenience store, and that's sort of how you should look at the services that you could probably get at that police station. Very basic, very quick, but even when I've gone there, I'm like, are you a police station or not? Or, is this sort of like, like a drop-off point for the dry cleaners, or do you actually have the machines back there cleaning the clothes? And it is extremely simple and basic, but it's, in a way, I think, a way to triage the amount of crime or police work that needs to go on. So very local things can be taken care of there. But the thing that really went wrong about this is that you'd think that if there is a local presence that can respond immediately, they can set the start button or activate button and really get the bigger powers onto the scene. Because they're there, they can activate it, and then they can call for backup. That's how I would feel like, oh, this is a really nice feeling that in every neighborhood there's this police station. They call it a police box in Korean, or that's kind of like how it's translated as. So this was the Itaewon police box. And ironically, though, it seems as if the opposite happens, because nothing can really move without the leadership at the top in the next division. And you know how I said before, I heard, with good authority that these people at the top, even like, in the stations themselves, like the managers, they always like to goof off. And some of you are just like, really? Like, where's the proof in that? Well, there is proof from this night. The national police chief was out camping. The one level down, the Seoul Metropolitan police chief went home, was sleeping after he was taking care of protests, and then he just took the subway home when he could have literally walked through and checked up on the situation. Then the next level down, the Yongsan district police chief, he was just slurping down some dinner, and then he sauntered over to the site after getting a report. Yeah, he couldn't be bothered to interrupt his dinner, and he didn't want to make a 10-minute walk. He wanted to just sit in traffic for about an hour. We'll get into that. And the district office in Yongsan, so it's not police related, but it's essentially like the city, instead of like Seoul City, it's the district city administration. Oh yeah, the head, she went home to visit her hometown that day, and then was crawling back in late at night on the evening of the Halloween tragedy, and she didn't even care about the situation. Yeah, all of them were out doing things. But actually, to look at it from one perspective, I think that it would have been a much bigger validation of the safety response system in Korea had these people just stayed camping, took an extra hour for dinner, and, maybe even flew to another country and wasn't available, and everything had taken care of itself. If the system on the lower levels were able to take it to the finish line in terms of, hey, we have a crisis, we have an emergency, we are, if you're not like some high big wig police person, you can take all of the steps and get the activation for the system to then start working to save people's lives. I would think that actually somebody like the national police chief, like knocked out, sleeping in a tent, camping, and everything took care of itself, is a bigger validation of our safety system. But no, it's the opposite. These guys at all of these levels want all the power, but they don't want to take the responsibility. And the responsibility in a practical sense is that things can't not move unless they are there to push it with their authority. So if you want to keep that system where everything is log jammed so that you can be the emperor and you're the one calling all of the shots, then you have to be present and you have to call all of the correct shots. all of the onus and responsibility. It's a heavier weight on your shoulders, and yet you just want basically all of the perks with none of the work. The first police squad arrived at the scene of the Halloween crowd crush nearly 85 minutes after the incident erupted, which is already late because 4 hours before the incident erupted, they already had all of these phone calls, and now there's going to be a lot of investigations. There have been raids into the offices of the police and other related departments. About 55 different offices have had like files and computers confiscated, especially when it turns out that there was an order by one of the police departments to erase and delete a file where basically it was a report saying that they were talking about preparations for the Halloween crowd crush, and basically it would prove that they didn't follow up on that, and they had even talked about it or wanted to go plan it, but then they didn't follow up. So they knew that they would get into serious trouble and everything would be pinned on them. So there was an order for this file report to be deleted, and then the original guy who wrote it, the guy that, you know, is a civil officer, he's like, no, I can't do that. I mean, this is a report. And then so they're like, fine, if you're not going to delete it, we're going to get another person to delete it. So some other worker deleted it, and the only reason why we know this is that I guess on the shared server they were able to delete it, but on the actual computer of the worker who refused, because he had, you know, like a password to get into this computer, like the file was still there. So that's how the file got into the hands of these National Assembly members who were grilling all of these officials. So this Itaewon police box. So let's start from the lower level and go all the way to the highest level. And so let's see where they should be blamed and shouldn't be blamed. So remember, we were hearing reports that there were first like 200 police officers, then like about 180, or maybe it was 130. And so these police officer figures, essentially what it turns out was conflated. The total staff at this Itaewon police box is about 120 people, but not everybody works at the same time. They go on a rotating system, 24 hours on the clock. And apparently there have been about like 20 to 30 people on duty that night, which was more than what normally would be present. So they did double the amount of staff that they normally would have because they were anticipating that this was going to be a very crowded night. So that is good. The other figures for the police officers, it turns out they were like almost like 100 like plainclothes policemen who were out monitoring for drug and other assault crimes that, you know, especially would happen to ladies, and they were in plain clothes. So they were, first of all, not even in the department where you would be able to have them respond to crowd situations or emergency situations. And because they weren't even in uniform, they would have no authority and people wouldn't even pay attention to them. And so that does not get counted. You can't count those police officers and saying like, oh, well, we dispatched, you know, at almost 200 police officers. So again, it looks like they were fudging the numbers to make themselves look less bad. So what it really turns out is that from this local Itaewon police box, you know, it's sort of like a convenience store trying to do the amount of volume that a Costco does. And they essentially were outstaffed, and they even had requested on record for more backup days before, and they did not get a response from the higher level police department agencies. So they went into this really like, well, you know, they can't demand any more police force outside of their, you know, little police box. They were able to, I guess, say, hey, you know, can you come in? I know you're not supposed to work this shift, but we probably need a little bit more staff. So they were at least able to double it. But still, it's still a convenience store. And you saw how many people there were. There were over 100,000 people that went to Itaewon that night. So the distress calls that were made totaled almost 100 or even more than 100, but the ones that were released was maybe about 10, and they made the Itaewon police box look really bad. So then people were thinking like, oh man, you guys are trying to pin it on the little guy. You're trying to pin it on the convenience store instead of really showing the full picture of what was going on that night and how many people were calling for help and where. So now let's go up one level to the Yongsan Police Department. So then this would be bigger than they would manage the Itaewon box and the other boxes within the Yongsan district inside of Seoul. And that police chief, Lee Im-jae, was suspended because people were just like, look, you just messed up big time. So he did not even arrive on the scene until 11:05, and his first thing in his mind was not the accident site, but to go to the police box. And then he said he just like monitored the situation on the roof. And why was he so late when he was so close by? The presidential office right now is actually, you can walk there in about 10 to 15 minutes from the site of the Itaewon disaster. It is very close by. And during the day, there have been a lot of anti-president protests for other matters, and the police were focused on that. All like the district police, the Seoul police, the national police, they're all focused on maintaining crowd control for all of these protests and rallies, who did not have nearly the amount of people that went to Itaewon that night. And so he was like, oh, tired from that day. He went to dinner nearby to eat some seolleongtang, which is some delicious Korean bone broth stew. And I'm pretty sure he went to, because if it was right there in that neighborhood at Noksapyeong, there's a really famous place that's been there for decades. He probably went over there and was just like, I gotta eat my soup because, but come on, like, how by that age you've had that soup probably 1,000 times, if not more, in your life, and you can have it 1,000 times more. It's not worth people, risking the safety of people's lives so that you can finish your dinner. Okay, let's say he just had to have some dinner because at that point it was about 9:30, 9:50, 9:45, and he could have just walked and he could have gone to the site by 10 p.m. But he insisted of being driven. I mean, like, look, are you a policeman or are you a CEO? Like, you gotta be driven everywhere. And everybody knows that you can't, that drive is literally like 2 or 3 minutes, 5 minutes maybe. But then with this traffic, yeah, it can take like half an hour to cross the road. And so it took at least an hour for him to get, and he took and he had to go on a sideway through the antique alley. So he got dropped off there, and there was CCTV that confirmed it. And this blew up the internet and also the news coverage because of his body language. They said that he literally at 11 p.m., he was sauntering towards the site. And this is after all of the reports have started to come in saying that people have passed away. People are on the street getting CPR. And it's questionable whether or not, like, did he get that this was such a emergency situation? Was there a failure in communication at that point where he didn't feel like it was a dire situation? Or did he get those reports anyway and still saunter? And the way that they showed him was like with his hands behind his back, this is a common body posture in any culture, but especially in Korea. That only indicates that you're not worried, that you're at peace. You see a lot of old people just, if they have nowhere to go, they're just like kind of like walking like this. That you might as well indict him right away, because for Korean people, that is a huge body language signal. So if you're wondering, like, why are people like kind of so, obsessed with him, the way that he's walking? Well, not only is he walking slowly, but he's walking in the posture of like, I don't care about anything right now because there's nothing important going on. When people are saying like, we should see CCTV cameras of him huffing and puffing and trying to, run as much as he can in his midlife. And he wasn't doing that at all. Now let's go to the next level, the Seoul Metropolitan Police Chief, Kim Kwang-ho, and he was also taking care of rallies and, he was tired and then he went back home and they make a big deal out of this. The way that the Korean news media shades a little bit, because they're shading him for the body language. They shaded him about like the neighborhood that he lived in. They're like, oh, he just went home to Daechidong, and basically Daechidong, if you saw Sky Castle, that was the area in Gangnam where like a lot of the hagwons are. It's not like a beautiful neighborhood, but it is an expensive neighborhood, and it epitomizes Gangnam in terms of, you think it might be like Gangnam Station. It's actually like Daechi Station and other environs around there, depending on what flavor of Gangnam you want to take. But essentially, they were shading him in the sense that like he's like an out of touch elite who is, supposed to be the police like guy to take care of the common folk, but there he is just, sleeping away in his multi-million-dollar apartment. So he went home at around 8:36 p.m. Again, he was right in the neighborhood, and these reports started to come in around like 6 p.m. and he just went home, and it's actually quite a distance between Itaewon and Daechidong. That's kind of a very long way to go. And apparently he was sleeping, so he missed 3 calls from the Yongsan police chief. And then he basically was able to arrive again well after midnight, around 12:11. And then he walked to the Itaewon police box, and then he went to the disaster site at around 12:25. So that was more than 2 hours after the main crowd crush incident. Horrible. Okay, so who wins the chicken dinner prize for being the most laughable clown in this situation? The national police chief, Yoon Hee-kun. He was the face of like, the head honcho. He is the highest police chief in South Korea. So this is now on a national level. We took it from the police box level to then the regional, then the city, and now this is the national. He wasn't even in Seoul. He was out camping. He was in a camping tent, and he said he went to bed around 11 p.m. That's why he missed a text at 11:32 p.m. He missed a call at 11:52 p.m. And then he eventually dragged himself out of bed, or eventually someone was able to contact him, but he started heading to Seoul around 2:30 a.m. Okay, so all these guys were not doing their jobs. All these guys were out playing. All these guys were unreachable. And one commentator even said that this is a very strange situation. Either they were really lax in their being able to be reached, or they were lying. Because he says a lot of officials, they're so paranoid about missing important phone calls that even when they strip butt naked, they go into the Korean sauna. Like Korean people, they like to, get their steam treatments on and like their skin scrub. If you've never been to a Korean bathhouse or sauna, try it out. But they say that even when they go there, because a lot of guys like to go, old men like to go a lot, like frequently, and they will wrap their phones up in like a Ziploc bag or something and keep it by them just in case there is an important phone call that they cannot miss. So everyone's saying like, this is a little bit weird, like how unreachable all these top level men were. I mean, he is like at the top level. And I know you're supposed to talk about work-life balance, but I ain't never met a kid whose daddy was that high up and they said like, oh, we went on camping trips, or oh, I spent quality time. No, these are neglected children because their daddy is too important. They had to do all these things and, never be able to do camping or going out places. So what was he doing camping? Now, I just want to throw in there, we'll go into this in other videos perhaps, but like the fire chief and the interior minister, and see like where their role was, president, should we blame him? But the interior minister, who is responsible for national safety, kind of like on that Seoul ferry level, in a testimony said some shocking things. He said that the accident would not have been avoidable even if police officers and firefighters had been deployed to the area in advance. So basically that means, so then what is your job? Your job is to make sure that that is not the case. And you're already thinking that, oh, well, nothing we could do if it's just meant to be, when this situation, even to like a 5-year-old, everybody knows, could have been avoided. So those were the different levels of the police and how they were derelict in their responsibilities. But I have to throw in this hoe and a half, the Yongsan district chief, and her name is Park Hee-young, and she is essentially the mini mayor if you're thinking of like neighborhoods as cities and then who's in charge of that. And Yongsan is kind of a big one, and they have a huge office building, and she didn't even go to the planning meeting for the Halloween festivities. She just skipped that. And where was she? She was basically on the other side of the country that day, visiting her hometown. She says that it was for some like official event, but everyone's just like, why y'all, why are you saying, that's your hometown though, girl? And it has nothing to do with Yongsan. And then she started crawling in at night around, like she got in about 8:30, and she said that she walked home, and I think she just walked home, right? But she lives literally like a few minutes walk away from the tragedy site, but there's a parallel street where she would use to walk home, and she said like, oh, that was her inspection. She just kind of, took a look, but she probably was just walking home after getting dropped off. But from that street, if you look in one direction, you could see across the main street an horrible disaster situation. She didn't care. She just went back home. She said that she just turning in for the night. She said in the hearings that the first she heard of it was a text message at 10:51 p.m. But everyone's like, I don't know, because they have like some secret staff chat rooms, and apparently some people were raising the alarms and sending photos even as early as 6:30 p.m. saying that, look, girl, in your neighborhood, there's a situation about to happen. This looks crazy. Take care of it. She didn't respond to that. 2 hours later, she uploaded a puff piece article about how great she did, visiting people and shaking hands and, making, looking like the great little district chief. But you look at her eyes and you look at how she's crazy. Taking no responsibility whatsoever. And a lot of people asking her to step down. They flooded the site of the Yongsan district office homepage, and they're just like, girl, step down. And if you drive by that building, there are always illegally parked cars right in front of the office building, creating a dangerous crush situation for drivers. So obviously, of course, she don't care. She can't even take care of her front yard. Girl can't even take care of her front yard. Girl lives in the neighborhood, can't even be bothered. This girl gotta go. I don't mean to just call her a girl, and the other guys, not boys, but they're all acting like toddlers. So yeah, those boys gotta go. This girl's gotta go. They all gotta go. But then you may be asking, just to play devil's advocate, well, okay, so there are different departments. It might get confusing. How are they supposed to all coordinate so quickly in a time of crisis? Well, not only is there a smartphone and chat rooms, but after the Seoul ferry disaster, South Korea spent $1 billion on some fancy walkie-talkie. And It's essentially a communication device that's supposed to link all the high-level people within South Korea when it comes to a disaster, because they didn't want another Seoul ferry incident and lack of coordination. So they spent $1 billion on this thing, but nobody was using this fancy walkie-talkie. So like it's like $1 billion iPhone that no one's using. Good Lord. So in a nutshell, those were the different layers of police department here in Korea, and a lot of Koreans themselves were, in an education mode about like, oh, is that how, oh gosh, that's how it works and that's how it failed? How could it fail with so many different layers? But then people are thinking like, of course it failed because of all of the different layers, because of if the emperor ain't there, then nothing can really move. Okay, so that was stressful. It may have added some years to your face. So what are you supposed to do in terms of a night serum that is affordable? Now, I know the price that I pay here in Korea is much different than the prices that you might pay overseas. I got like this big one and this smaller one together for like less than $10. And I know that I think this is about $30 on Amazon. And this serum is essentially a dupe of the Estee Lauder Advanced Night Repair. Missha, they're famous for basically like, if it's popular, we're going to try to copy it. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but those few key products where it really works, oh my gosh, like it turns you into a fan, and then you try the other products and it's like, you didn't copy it that well. This one I think is better because I'm not a big fan of Advanced Night Repair, but there's a whole fandom around it. I understand. But the main thing about the Advanced Night Repair and those serums is that they're trying to repair the skin biome, as in your balance of good bacteria on your skin. And so the reason why this one I think is like super effective is that it has, like they said, 10 different probiotics. And sometimes you can feel it, like you can't always feel it, but like when I put this on, I was like, oh, I feel like this is quality, this feels good, I feel something happening, and I think it really does work. It goes on, and I don't feel a lot of dimethicone, so they're not cheating in that way. I really do think that they are putting in the work for the probiotics. So they say it's triple fermented, and in a way, like Korea with fermented products, you can trust that they put a really good emphasis on fermentation, that they know what they're doing when they talk about fermentation. You're supposed to use this at night, but I use it also during the daytime. It's supposed to lift and do magical things at night, but we all know that, lifting and stuff like that really only happens from technology. I think this is pretty good, and especially good for the price, and I know it is probably like 5 times cheaper than that Estee Lauder Advanced Night Repair. So if you want to give it a shot, link is in the description below. Check it out. I would say, yes, this is one of the Missha winners. Not all their stuff is winners, but this one I think is definitely a winner. Okay, and really quick, yes, there's a bundle deal now. You can get the silver eye care solution and also the EcoFace LED mask, either in gold or white. It makes a great pair, makes a great gift. And yes, you should probably get started on it now as soon as you can, so that, you can look good at your holiday parties and see the effects. This is really great because it's like a 15-minute power nap. You can have the heating pads that really like increase eye circulation, just feels good. And then the lights light up underneath, so you get the LED lights on your under eyes. And then of course the mask will give you your total facial without any products. You just put on a very light serum or an emulsion just to kind of like keep your skin moist, but don't put on anything too heavy like creams, because that'll block the LED lights from going in, because they are going to 2 different depths of your skin: 630 nanometers, 830 nanometers. The 630 wavelength, the frequency of the light, stimulates collagen, and then the 830 stimulates blood circulation. So you're gonna look good. All right, guys. Well, what do you think? I mean, this was a massive, massive failure on so many fronts. And I wanted to clarify, when we say police, we're not talking about just one thing, that there's many components in that box. And it looks like we almost had a situation where they were going to just let the whole thing get blamed on the people with the least amount of power, the junior rookie officers at the Itaewon police box, instead of the people who are out camping or eating bone broth stew or sleeping in their multi-million-dollar mansion or saying that they needed to be chauffeured to the site. We need accountability, and right now Korea is in an uproar. They want accountability. We're gonna go into maybe some of the other leaders who may be also on the chopping block or should be on the chopping block in other videos. I just wanted to focus on the police in this one. So leave your comments below. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye, guys.